Now on to climate change, which is leading to a rapid decline in Arizona's main source of water, the Colorado River. New research from U of A climate scientists Jonathan Overpeck and Colorado State University's Brad Udall predicts that the river's flow could drop by 50% by the year 2050. I sat down with Overpeck to talk about how that could change life as we know it in this state and across the American Southwest.
Well, we'll have to start cutting back in our use of water, that a lot of the water now, most of it goes to agricultural uses, and so that'll see some declines. It'll probably also make the cost of water for municipal and business applications go up significantly, and eventually there'll just be not enough water for everything we want to do. So it'll force the Southwest to sort of curb the growth that we've seen in the past.
How seriously should we desert dwellers be taking this threat?
I think more than any other people in the United States, perhaps, except for the guys that are on the sea coast where the sea level rise is occurring, because this really does threaten the lifeblood of the Southwest and the broader western region. Climate change is knocking back our water supply, and it will knock it back a lot more if we allow climate change to continue.
And what policy changes would you like to see our leaders making in order to prepare for these changes?
Well, we have a lot of really clever people, particularly in the water management sector, but also forestry, where you're obviously seeing forest dying and more wildfire. A lot of what we can do that's regardless of politics is adapt to these drier, hotter times and learn to use less water. Learn to manage forests for change rather than trying to keep them the way they are. But eventually that'll be overwhelmed because the loss of our water supply, the heat, the warming will be so great that it'll be very hard for adaptation strategies to do the job. And so we'll have to literally curtail what we're doing here in the Southwest, curtail the growth. And so what I've been arguing is that we should really pay attention to the cause of the problem and try and deal with the cause, which is the emission of greenhouse gases, mainly from burning of fossil fuel. That is what's really cooking the Southwest. And if we don't start dealing with that soon, the changes that I've been talking about are going to be baked in, and we'll have to adapt to them no matter what. But the sooner we act to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, say like California is trying hard to do, the sooner the problem itself will be solved.
Their policies, and then their people. I asked Peck what changes individuals can make to be part of the solution.
Well, there are lots of little things we can do, and I think a lot of people in Arizona already do that. We use our water wisely, we use our electricity wisely, but in the end that won't be enough. We really need to all work together to convince our political leaders that it should be a priority for the United States, starting in Arizona, to come up with policies that reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, reduce our dependence on fossil fuel, and move into clean energy. And that's a win-win for Arizona because a lot of those solutions involve solar power, wind power, the kinds of things that would make Arizona job growth go through the roof because we have such a unlimited supply of sunshine and wind.
If you had to give us a grade, how are we doing as Arizonans right now?
Well, I think we're making real progress, but we're in the C- range right now. I mean, I really worry that this part of the country is literally going to be toast if we don't get moving at a much faster pace.
What's your response to people that say, the climate has always changed and the science is unclear on whether or not it's actually linked to human activity?
Well, I say they're either listening to the fossil fuel industry, the big oil, or the people who work for them. We know with great confidence why the Earth is warming. We know that it's not part of some natural cycle or variation. We know, it's just known with great confidence. And not only that, it's really known with great confidence that if we don't curb the greenhouse gas emissions, it will continue to warm. And that warming will knock back our water supply, and it'll certainly affect our forests, our vegetation. It'll affect public health because it'll allow a lot more infectious disease to come from warmer latitudes to the south. So all these things we know really well now, and there's just no getting around that. So I say it's a bunch of bull to ignore it.
More than 70% of the water in the Colorado River is used to irrigate agricultural land, field after field, growing the food that's eaten all over the U.S. I asked Peck what farmers need to do as water supplies dwindle.
Well, growers, the people who are the farmers, are innovating as quick as everyone else to use less water and to use it more wisely, to get more money out of each drop, say. And I think that has to continue. But at some point we will be forced to choose between water for the cities and waters for the farms. And that's a major economic sector here in the Southwest. It's nice to have our food coming from nearby. Once we have to start importing it from further away, then of course that has embedded costs in terms of carbon dioxide as well. So you can only do so much with farming. The other thing about farming is these fallow fields, the abandoned fields that would result, those are the big reasons we have these dust storms. And these fields have a lot of chemicals that have piled up in the soil over the years, and that's in the dust storms. And with the drying, no one in Arizona wants to see a big uptick in dust storms, but we're already starting to see that. So this will become a much dustier part of the country, and getting out of agriculture will speed that up.
What are some other ways Arizona is vulnerable to climate change?
Well, a lot of people don't think about this, but I think everyone knows that if we have a natural disaster somewhere else in the country, all the taxpayers pay, our economy pays. And we're about to start seeing some really major disasters on the coasts of America, particularly the Gulf Coast and the Atlantic Coast, Florida, New Orleans. These places are going to increasingly be flooded, and people are going to have to retreat inland, and we're going to lose a lot of infrastructure, and it's going to cost enormous amounts of money, both for our insurance rates, but also the federal government will be bailing everyone out. We know that always happens. So that will affect our whole country's economic well-being, and I think our own pocketbooks.
The United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord.
You may be wondering how it's been working as a climate scientist during Trump's presidency.
It's very depressing to see what's going on in Washington now. It's clear in my mind that the fossil fuel industry sort of runs the country in terms of our climate policy, and the Trump administration seems to be perfectly okay with that. Coal jobs are disappearing not because we're trying to get away from climate change. It's because coal's too expensive now relative to natural gas and even some of the renewable energy sources. So coal is going away no matter what. And those jobs, they've already gone away, as the coal mines become more automated and fewer and farther between. So I'm really sad in a sense that the current administration is willing to kowtow to one industry at the expense of the country. That just doesn't seem American.
Do you have any areas that you can point out to, sort of areas of hope or positive change happening?
Well, again, I always like to point to say what California is doing as a state. Notice that California has one of the most robust, fastest growing economies in the whole country, and they also are cutting greenhouse gas emissions more aggressively than any other state. But there are other states doing that. There are a lot of cities. Tucson is trying hard to join other cities to curb emissions. Most people in America live in cities, so that's very encouraging. But the rate of all of this is just too slow, I worry, to save the day for the Southwest and our water supply and our forests and why everyone wants to live here in this beautiful part of the country.
You're leaving the University of Arizona for a new post at the University of Michigan. What will you be doing there, and why did you decide to take that step?
It was a really hard decision because there are so many great environmentally oriented scholars and professors and students here at the University of Arizona. This is a powerhouse. But the University of Arizona has stepped back from their investment in the environment, and I hope it's only temporary. And my dream is to really have an impact in helping universities or accelerating the way universities help society. And I think I can do a lot more at the University of Michigan just because they're very eager to have a bigger impact in society and really help solve problems like climate change. But there's so many other problems that are environment and sustainability oriented. I hope to be working with colleagues there to really make a difference in society.
And you're setting up a new institute there, correct?
No, well, I'm actually setting up a new school, which is equivalent to a college at the University of Michigan, and it's going to cut across the entire university. And the University of Michigan is a substantially bigger university with a much bigger research enterprise, and a lot of students are going to be involved in this process. And the idea is that everything at the University of Michigan is going to really start focusing on, at least in part, sustainability, making the world a better place for future generations, not just our own generation.